Okay, we're back. Hello everyone and welcome back to Mindset Matters. My name is Vic, the host of the Mindset Matters podcast, where we learn to grow with purpose, live with intention, and show up positively in the world. So welcome. Just a heads up, my microphone isn't working. I think the cord that needs to plug it into my laptop to record is busted or got damaged in my travels. If you notice, I am in a new location. I have moved. So I'm just gonna record on my camera today, but I decided I really want to show up today and talk about something that's been on my mind. So I'm excited to be here, even if the sound isn't as amazing as it would normally be. So today we're going to talk about having tough conversations, and I'm going to give you, I think, 7 tips for navigating challenging conversations, whether it's with new people in your life, people you're in relationships with. I think all of these tips will be helpful to just navigate needing to have tough conversations. Because communication is very important, and being able to express yourself, I think, is a skill that can be learned. Some people are better at it, more natural at it. For me, it's definitely something that I have developed over the years and not something that always came naturally to me. So welcome, let's get into it. I've missed you. And let's talk about how to have those challenging convos. So just as a little backstory, I feel like now I've become someone who's really good at having challenging conversations, and it's something, again, I've worked on. I think my first serious relationship in university really helped me because my partner at the time was really adamant about us like sitting down and talking about things that were bothering us, and he always wanted to have a conversation, and so he kind of taught me that it's okay to express myself in that way and to bring things up if I need to. But before that, I was the type of person who had a hard time expressing if something went wrong, especially with friends. I just wanted my friendships to always be perfect, and so I would never like voice if my friends did something that upset me. And I think it definitely led to some tension in friendships and some challenges, and like definitely for me, like deep feelings of frustration that I never learned to express until later on. So I'm hoping that the tips we talk about today will help. But the reason I was thinking about this is because recently I've had to have a couple tough conversations with new people and in different types of settings. And I realized that I didn't always handle it the best, or I was overthinking it. And I was like, you know what's interesting is when you establish good communication with someone, it can be easy to kind of communicate well. Like all my close friends, I'm like, yeah, I can talk to them. It's easy. But I was in a setting where I had to talk to a parent of one of my students, and, you know, the parent was upset about something, and I kind of panicked. I was really nervous to have the conversation, and I'll get into the details about that a little bit later. But this is kind of what sparked this and a couple other things sparked my kind of re-interest or realizing that this would be a good topic. So let's get into my tips for how you're going to navigate tough conversations. Oh, I have a neighbor who sneezed. Should I yell at the window? Bless you. I wonder if you could hear it. See, no microphone. There's some background noise. Okay, let's get into it. So tip number 1, listening to understand. When you are having a challenging conversation with someone, it is so important that you understand the problem, that you understand their feelings, that you understand where they're coming from. Why are they upset? Okay, so the goal should be to understand and to ask questions so that they can communicate with you what is going on. I think sometimes we go into the conversation and we just want to respond. Right? Listening to respond versus listening to understand is so different, and it's so powerful. I feel like we all hopefully have someone supportive in your life. Think about someone who's such a good listener, and they're the type of friend who you know will listen without judgment. that is a great person to have. And I think sometimes we just want to give advice to people and we want to tell them what they should do. But at the end of the day, like, a lot of the times people during tough conversations just need you to listen, or they just need to express themselves. So really trying to listen and ask questions that will help you understand where they're coming from, and then therefore you can respond appropriately, is going to take you very far. Okay, tip number 2 is to go into the conversation without assumptions. So let's talk a little bit about this conversation I was supposed to have with a parent. I went into the conversation with the assumption of what I thought they were upset about. And so in my head, I almost had prepared like what I wanted to say to them. And the problem with this, and you know, I think maybe you could relate to, at some point you have to have a tough conversation and you're like, you almost like write a script, or like you kind of practice it in your head of like how you think the conversation's gonna go. And the problem with this is I went in and I was like, okay, these are the things I'm gonna say. But what I failed to do is really understand what the problem actually was. And I think looking back, like, that conversation didn't go very well. I could tell that they were frustrated probably because I wasn't understanding, and I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to really ask questions, and I didn't ask the right questions to like really understand what was going on. So go into a conversation without assumptions. Remember, to assume makes an ass of you and me, okay? We learned that one the hard way. So when you assume why someone's wrong, or you put words in their mouth, you're not diffusing a situation. You're actually probably making it a lot worse, and making that person feel a lot worse, because they don't feel understood, and they don't feel like you're trying to understand. They just feel like you're coming at it like as if you already know. And if someone needs to talk to you about something, and vice versa, right? It can be super frustrating when you're trying to talk to someone about something and they just cut you off, or finish your sentence for you, or make an assumption about why you're upset and don't actually, again, listen. Number 3, this is something I heard, and I can't remember where, this was years ago, but I really liked it and it stuck with me. Go into an argument thinking you are 10% wrong. So when you're maybe in a relationship with someone, even in a friendship, you get into an argument, or there's something that happens. If you are so stubborn to your core and you are looking at it very black and white, I'm right, they're wrong, what I want out of this person is just an apology, or I want them to be admitting that they were wrong. If you always go into a conversation thinking, I could be 10% wrong, I'm 90% right, 90% right, but I could be 10% wrong. I think even just having that mindset that you could be 10% in the wrong, it leaves that wiggle room to automatically be coming from a place of, well, how was I 10% wrong? Or what do they need to tell me? Or how can I listen to understand why maybe I was 10% wrong? And again, not that we can necessarily label whether something is right, wrong, 80%, 80-20, like whatever. But I think going into a tough conversation thinking, okay, I could be 10% in the wrong, let's hear what they have to say. I think you're always gonna be better off than thinking, I'm right, they're wrong, that's it. And if they don't admit that right away, then it's not gonna go anywhere. Tip number 4 for handling tough conversations is thinking about the time and the place for such conversations. I used to struggle with this, where I would almost try to navigate these conversations just in any setting. And there have been times in my life where I was maybe out in like a lighthearted, fun setting, you know, hanging with friends, and I would bring something up that was not appropriate for the vibe, and I would be just bringing down the mood, essentially. And, you know, or always complaining about something and complaining about it, you know, no matter what. Or catching up with a friend and I'm automatically complaining about, you know, my problems or whatever that looks like. But I think what's important to remember is there's a time and place to have these types of conversations. It's okay to just show up and have fun with people And even if you're struggling with something, I'm not saying you shouldn't talk about it, but I'm just thinking that it's good to almost plan ahead and reflect on, okay, what is the appropriate setting for having this conversation? Maybe it's a coffee date. Maybe it's going for a walk with someone. Maybe it's, when we're at the end of our day and we both have the energy to have this conversation, versus bringing something up at an inopportune time. Let's say someone who's really, really frustrated or they're tired, and then you're trying to come at them with something else to add to their plate. If their frustration level or exhaustion level is high and then you're adding to that, it's probably not the best time to have that conversation. Versus even communicating in advance, hey, I really want to talk to you about something, like, can we find a time to go for a walk? Or are you okay if we talk about it now? I think opening up the space, it's not always going to be that way, but I think communicating in advance also holds you accountable, because sometimes having a tough conversation, you say like, okay, today's the day. I'm going to bring up why I've been upset. I'm going to let them know how I feel. And then you get there and you chicken out. So by in advance warning them, or kind of just saying, hey, I would love to just like chat one-on-one. Like, can we go for a walk, grab a coffee? I just want to talk to you about something. And kind of letting them know that you want to have a conversation. So one, they're expecting it. Two, it holds you accountable. You won't chicken out. And again, you can find a space and a time that kind of works for both people. Tip number 5 is, in a new relationship or new friendship, establish lines of communication early on. So I recently moved to Vancouver, and I've been here for about 2 weeks now, almost 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, has it been almost 2 weeks? I guess it has. Time flies when you're having a blast. Okay, so I moved here, and guess what? I'm living with 2 roommates, and I have lived alone for 3 years, okay? So me coming here and sharing a space with people is like definitely an adjustment, and I've definitely had a couple moments of like, oh my God, I need my own space. But so far it's going great. I really like my roommates. But one thing I had to communicate was like, hey, sometimes my social battery is really low and I'm just like not in the mood to socialize. And that was something I found myself having a hard time saying that. And I didn't show up, and, I have one roommate who's super chatty and loves to chat and can, talk forever. And I think it's great that we've been able to, learn about each other and everything. But I definitely feel like sometimes I don't have the capacity to have really long conversations. I'm just used to literally being alone almost all the time. So that's been an adjustment. And I found myself being like, Vic, you just have to tell her like, hey, just let her know that you need quiet time right now. Or you're just like not in the mood to chat. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like this big thing, but for some reason, because it's a newer person in my life, I'm like, I don't want to seem, I don't want to come across like I'm standoffish or rude, or that I don't want to get to know my roommates. You know what I mean? So I think it's just funny that we can get so in our head when we're around new people, and it's just kind of a reminder to be okay establishing those communications. So something that I want to say is just like, hey, honestly, don't have the capacity to chat right now. I'm just going to hang out in my room, or let's talk about this later. Like even those little things, like, oh, would love to learn more about this. I'm just like feeling really tired. I'm going to just like chill by myself. And there we go. So it doesn't have to be a big deal. I think we get so in our head about things, especially when you're dealing with new people. Like in all my long-term friendships, I feel like it's so easy to just communicate, or like, for example, I've been trying to FaceTime with a friend, or for a while I was trying to FaceTime with a friend, and we had planned it a couple times, then she canceled, and then there was time I was super tired, or like, and it just wasn't working. And for me and her, we already know that it's chill, it's not a big deal for us to just be like, hey, sorry, like my battery's at 0, like let's find another time. And we did find a time, and it worked for both of us, and it was great to catch up. But I think it's just important to, like, when you're in a newer situation or new relationships, just establish those communications like early on. And it's not that big a deal. Like, I feel like we make things a bigger deal than they have to be. So speak up for what you need. It's okay. And at the end of the day, if the person's gonna be not understanding about it, then might not be someone that you want in your life anyways. Tip number 6 is just kind of a mindset reminder that it's better to express yourself than to silently suffer. It's better to express yourself than silently suffer. I feel like, again, looking back on my life in high school, early university, I really struggled to like express how I was feeling in a productive way. And honestly, I think I was a lot more like sassy, or with some of my roommates in university, we did not have a good roommate relationship. And there was a lot of like passive aggressiveness going on in terms of like people not cleaning up their mess and us trying to find a system, but we just didn't know how to communicate. We just weren't mature enough yet. So I think just what I've learned is it's better to express yourself than to suffer in silence and to feel like you need to hold it in or to feel like someone won't understand. You know, you need to express how you feel. If something's bothering you, the more you let it just ruminate and sit there and shove it down, it's like you can only shove it down for so much. Eventually it's going to surface and you might like just explode and it's going to be way worse. And again, this ties into dropping the assumption. We sometimes suffer in silence because we think that the other person will take it wrong, or we assume that they won't understand what we mean, or we assume that they won't make the changes necessary. So we don't express how we feel. And just like you don't want to be going in with an assumption about what they have to say, you don't want to be in the reverse role of assuming that if you need to express yourself that they won't get it. So try to just eliminate assumptions. Don't suffer in silence. If you need to have a conversation with someone about something that's bothering you, give yourself permission. You are worth having that conversation. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, if it doesn't turn out the way you wish it did, whether you were in the wrong or you feel like you didn't communicate well, it's practice. It's practice and you will get better at communicating. So tip number 7 is that sometimes a tough conversation isn't even about you and someone else. Sometimes a tough conversation is like a friend needing to vent, or you needing to vent to a friend who's not the problem, right? Like let's say you got into a fight with someone. Instead of talking to that person, you just need to vent a little bit. It's okay to like sit with it for a bit. I think we have this tendency, or some people have a tendency to like almost like word vomit, and right away you're telling someone. Something happens in your life and right away you want to tell someone. And I don't think this is the healthiest way to deal with things. Think about if you are the type of person where as soon as something happens in your life, you feel like you need to tell people like right away. You meet a boy, you need to tell your friends, oh my God, I met a boy, right away, before anything significant has actually happened. As I've matured, I've like learned to keep things to myself a little bit more and to let myself sit with things before I tell people, because it helps you actually process how you feel. Sometimes something will happen and in the moment it seems like a big deal. So if you go then tell somebody else, you're making it a bigger deal by sharing it with people and then getting their feedback and their opinion. Oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And then suddenly it's this big thing. So when things happen, before you go and tell everyone else in your life, like I'm not saying again, we don't want to suffer in silence, but give yourself some time to actually process how you feel about it before someone else is telling you how they feel. Because what happens is we're so influenced by the people around us that we don't even, sometimes you'll just respond based on what someone else told you to do, and you don't actually take the time to know how you feel about it. So something I've learned, and something honestly that's like been so amazing in my life, is just keeping things to myself and telling people things only when I've made a decision on it. Sometimes, yes, I genuinely want the opinions of people in my life, but a lot of the time I think it's healthy to kind of come up with your own opinion and your own solution to a problem and your own response to something that happens. But if you are in a situation where someone needs to vent to you or vice versa, again, hold the space for them. Sometimes a friend will come to me and they're like, can I just freaking yell out what's going on right now? And I'm like, give it to me. I can take it. So I think it's so awesome to be able to hold space for someone who is struggling with something and they just need to vent. Just hold space. Don't give them advice. Just listen. Again, listen to understand. And if they need to yell and be upset, you know, it's not directed at you necessarily, but let them express themselves. I listened to a podcast recently from a girl named Jackie Winkler, and is that her name? No, Hoodwinkler is her TikTok. She's like a manifestation coach. It might be Jackie Winkler. That might be her name. Anyways, I forget what her podcast is called, but she was talking about in her episode, you know, the over HRification of adult conversations and self-expression, and how these days we almost overemphasize the need to be very, hello, can we have a conversation about this? Or hey, this upset me. Can you hold the space for me right now? And what I loved about what she said was, sometimes conversations are heated. Sometimes things happen in the moment and you need to express yourself. Sometimes things happen that are like really frustrating and you might need to just like yell and scream about it. Like imagine two people who are both very stable emotionally. They've established good communication lines between each other. They're in a strong relationship. Person A is frustrated and they just kind of need to vent and let it out. Person B holds that space. They're like, give it to me. What else? Yell it out. Like, it was an interesting conversation to hear because it's like, yeah, like sometimes things are in the moment and sometimes there's passion involved in conversations that you're having. And I think that that's okay if conversations get a little bit heated, as long as you're coming from a place of, you know, you're not being aggressive towards the other person and you're not saying things that are going to be harmful in the relationship. But I think being able to just like wholly and completely express yourself shows that you trust someone, right? Because if every conversation you have is very almost formal and very, hey, I need to talk to you about this, and hey, you know, I'm upset, or this is going on, you know, I think that's a great way to establish it. But sometimes you're just like, dude, I just need to let it rip. I just need to vent. You know, it's almost like how you might talk to, you know, your parents if you're close with them, or a sibling. I think about sibling communication, how siblings will go at it. Siblings will rip each other to shreds and yell at each other and everything. And it's like, siblings communicate in a way that you only would communicate someone who like you're tied to for life, right? Like if you yelled at a friend the way you would yell at your siblings, it's just not the same. And I think that that's so beautiful in a way that like we're allowed to express ourselves fully and like be fully in the rage of the upset with people we trust so deeply. And so I think that that was an interesting take on, you know, yes, I think it's great to establish the norm of being in a good space to have conversations, but in reality, sometimes you're just upset and you need to express that, and I think that that is okay. So I hope these tips are something that you can apply in your life. Let me know in the comments if you think I forgot anything. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe the video. I'm super excited to be sharing very soon some updates to the Mindset Matters coaching business. I have some very exciting things coming and things I'm really, really excited to share, and I think you guys are really going to be excited too. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you can check out my website at mindsetmatterswithvic.com, and I will chat with you very soon.